You walk into a supermarket. You grab a basket. You move through the aisles. And without realizing it, every second of your journey has already been calculated. The music you hear, the smell of fresh bread, the layout of the products, even the size of the shopping cart you're pushing. Everything was designed for one thing only: to make you spend more money. And the worst part is that it works. Because unlike what we like to believe, our purchases are not rational. They are manipulated. Silently. Scientifically. Today, we're going to explore some of the most powerful psychological techniques companies use to influence your decisions every single day. And trust me, after this video, you'll never look at a store, an ad, or even a fast food menu the same way again. Because once you understand how the system works, you realize that many of your choices may never have truly been yours. But before we talk about modern manipulation techniques, we need to understand one essential thing. My name is Elias Crow, and I just launched this channel for people fascinated by manipulation. The goal is simple: tell stories about scams, fraud, and uncover how manipulation works and how to protect yourself from it. If you want to support me and help us create even better videos, consider subscribing. It's free, and it helps a lot more than you might think. Companies don't sell products. They sell behaviors. And to control behavior, you first need to understand the human brain. That's exactly what happened in the 1950s. At the time, a man named Ernest Dichter began working with some of the biggest American brands. His goal was simple: figure out why people really buy things. Not the reasons they give, the real reasons. And what he discovered completely changed modern marketing forever. Consumers don't buy only for practical needs. They buy for emotions. For status, to feel accepted, important, attractive, superior. In other words, people don't want a watch. They want the feeling the watch gives them. And companies quickly realized something terrifying. If you can attach an emotion to a product, people will become emotionally dependent on that product without even realizing it. That's exactly why advertisements almost never focus on the product itself. A perfume ad doesn't show liquid inside a bottle. It shows desire, luxury, power. A car commercial doesn't talk about the engine. It talks about freedom, dominance, success. They're not selling you an object. They're selling you an identity. And this technique works so well that today, some companies are worth hundreds of billions almost entirely because of their image. Take Apple, for example. Objectively, some Android phones sometimes have better technical specs, better battery life, better cameras, more customization. And yet, millions of people remain loyal to Apple. Why? Because Apple doesn't sell a phone. Apple sells belonging. The logo itself becomes a social symbol. And psychologically, that's incredibly powerful. The human brain hates being excluded from the group. For thousands of years, belonging to a tribe increased our chances of survival. So even today, our brains subconsciously seek to follow the behavior of the dominant group. This is called social proof bias. If everyone wants something, then that thing must have value. That's why some restaurants intentionally create fake lines outside their doors. That's why apps display messages like, "Over 5,000 people are viewing this product right now." That's why brands pay influencers millions to wear their clothes. Because seeing someone else desire something automatically increases our own desire for it. But the problem is, companies have pushed this logic much further. Today, some techniques are so sophisticated that they manipulate your brain before you even realize you're making a decision. Take supermarkets, for example. Have you ever wondered why milk and eggs are always at the back of the store? It's not random. Essential products are deliberately placed far away from the entrance to force you to walk through as many aisles as possible. And the more products you see, the more your brain is tempted to buy impulsively. Even the colors are carefully calculated. Red stimulates urgency and appetite. Yellow grabs attention quickly. Blue creates trust. That's why McDonald's uses red and yellow. And that's why many banks use blue. Your brain unconsciously associates certain emotions with certain colors. But honestly, things get even more disturbing when we talk about pricing. Because prices themselves are psychological manipulation. Why do most products cost $9.99 instead of $10? Because your brain reads the first digit faster than the rest. Even though, rationally, you know the difference is meaningless. Emotionally, your brain still perceives $9.99 as cheaper. And that's not even the craziest technique. There's something called the decoy effect. Imagine a movie theater selling 3 subscription plans. Option 1, streaming only to $9. Option 2, printed magazine only, $19. Option 3, streaming plus magazine equals $19. Objectively, option 2 makes no sense. Why pay the same amount for less? Because option 2 was never designed to be purchased. It exists to make option 3 look far more attractive. And studies have shown that this technique massively increases sales. In other words, some offers are not meant to be chosen. They're meant to manipulate your final choice. And honestly, the deeper you go into this topic, the more you realize that almost everything around us is optimized to influence our behavior. Even casinos. Casinos are probably one of the most psychologically manipulative environments ever created. There are almost no clocks, very few windows, lights everywhere, constant sounds. The goal is simple: make you lose track of time. And slot machines are even worse. They use something called variable rewards. Sometimes your brain gets rewarded, sometimes it doesn't. And that's exactly what creates addiction. Because unpredictable rewards release massive amounts of dopamine. That's also exactly how social media works. You open your phone. You scroll. Sometimes you see something boring. Then suddenly, a funny video. A notification. A message. A like. And your brain keeps going. Again. 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 Modern apps are no longer fighting directly for your money. They're fighting for your attention. Because attention has become one of the most valuable resources in the world. The longer you stay on a platform, the more money it makes from advertising. So algorithms are trained for one mission only: keep you connected as long as possible. And sometimes it becomes almost creepy. You've probably experienced that strange moment where you talk about a product with someone, and a few hours later, you suddenly see an ad for that exact product. And even if technically your phone may not be listening constantly, companies already have an enormous amount of data about you. Your searches, your clicks, your habits, your screen time, the videos you watch until the end, the posts you pause on for just a few extra seconds. Sometimes they understand your behavior better than you do. And thanks to artificial intelligence, this ability is becoming even more powerful. Platforms can now predict what will grab your attention before you even realize it yourself. But there's one technique that's even more manipulative: artificial scarcity. Only 2 items left. Limited offer. Sale ends in 3 hours. Sometimes it's true, but very often it's completely fabricated. because the human brain hates missing opportunities. This is called FOMO, fear of missing out. The fear of missing something important. And that fear pushes people to make impulsive decisions extremely quickly. That's exactly why some clothing brands release limited drops. Not because they can't produce more, but because scarcity artificially increases desire. And the craziest part is that the harder something seems to obtain, the more value our brains assign to it, even if, objectively, the product itself is nothing special. But honestly, no industry uses psychology as aggressively as the food industry. Scientists literally spend years engineering foods to make them as addictive as possible. The perfect combination of sugar, salt, fat, texture. The goal isn't just for you to enjoy the product. The goal is to make you crave more. And some studies show that ultra-processed foods activate the brain in ways extremely similar to addictive substances. That's why it sometimes feels impossible to eat just a few chips. Your brain is literally being hacked. But the craziest thing about all of this is that despite these manipulations, most people still believe they are completely rational. We like to think we control our choices. But the reality is that our brains rely on countless mental shortcuts, and those shortcuts can be exploited. Again, and again, and again. So, does that mean we're completely doomed? Not necessarily. Because understanding these techniques already weakens their power dramatically. When you recognize manipulation, your brain regains part of its control. You start seeing the mechanisms behind the advertisements, behind the apps, behind the prices, behind the algorithms. And suddenly, the world looks very different. You realize that many companies are not simply trying to sell you a product. They're trying to capture your attention, your emotions, and sometimes even your entire identity. And honestly, I think the real danger begins when people stop questioning these systems completely. Because a society where everyone is manipulated, but nobody realizes they're being manipulated, is probably the most effective form of control ever created. And the most terrifying part is that every single year, the system becomes smarter. It was Elias Crow.